As we continue to move through this transitioning year of 2020, for those that are walking with their eyes open, it is very clear that we are moving towards something big. The world is changing. This seems to me to be undeniable, but for many, it seems as if this change is something that they would like to ignore until it becomes fully implemented. But if you've been following this channel for a while, it's this change that I have been warning of and trying to sound the alarm on for many people to prepare for. So many people are looking for some sort of revolution, and what they do not realize is that what they are asking for is exactly what they do not want. But if they are walking with their eyes closed and only seeing what they would like to see, they may be waiting on and anticipating this new world with high expectations. Things have the appearance of seeming to have calmed down from how the year started. If you remember, from January 2nd, the United States almost had war with Iran, and that died down just as suddenly as it escalated. And then COVID-19 happened. The world went on a 2-month lockdown, the economy started tanking, and things looked really bad. But then all that started to die down, and the lockdowns lifted, and the economy was artificially inflated and propped up by central banks.
Fair to say you simply flooded the system with money?
Yes, we did. That's another way to think about it. We did.
Where does it come from? Do you just print it?
We print it digitally.
And the unprecedented event of a global shutdown came and went from the minds of the masses, leading us to a social revolution where all of a sudden a world plagued by racial mindsets now all of a sudden has band together to destroy racism, and now everyone cares about black people. What couldn't be fixed over 60 years from the civil rights movement is now being addressed within a month's time. This has been a very busy year, and for many, they would like to just forget about all the negative and hope for the best. And while I understand that mentality, I assure you that this mindset will not prepare you for what's coming next. The truth is that all that I just talked about in the first half of the year was just Act 1. It only set the stage and provided everyone with the foundation for the overall transition. It was highly important and necessary. It was disruptive, but not at the point where it was not easily controlled and managed. We are now in intermission. They are just getting things prepared for the start of Act 2. If you are asleep to what's going on in the world, you may be enjoying this intermission and maybe have started back in the planning phase of your life, ready to get back to your life goals and plans and ready to forget the horrible start of 2020. And because of this, you may not be recognizing what has been happening over the last month or so. You may not be seeing completely what is happening during this intermission phase. I would like to at least bring some things to your attention so that you're able to make informed decisions as you continue on with your life and prioritizing what you feel is important and not. In planning and prioritizing, we always need the complete picture. And so I will be providing you with some things you might not have known has been happening over the last month or so. It's imperative that we continue with the right perspective and mindset as this world continues to move towards its transition. Let's begin. The beating of war drums. Do you know that war drums are beating harder than ever right now? There have been some pretty major warnings that have come out recently that I believe everyone needs to know about. North Korea. Last year, when Donald Trump, who was masterful at doing things for the camera by the way, when he met North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and shook his hand at the Korean demilitarized zone, many thought that the tension between North and South Korea was going to be over soon. That was their hopes anyway. But that seemed that it was just all for show. Because during this week, the 4th week of June, North Korea made some very provocative statements, which was reported by the TASS news agency, the largest Russian news agency and one of the largest news agencies worldwide. The North Korean embassy in Moscow sent a statement to TASS news agency and threatened America with a sensational event that would destroy the country. They said, this year, the U.S. military is deploying all sorts of military maneuvers in South Korea and in the areas adjacent to it with the purpose of striking North Korea quickly. They said they have nuclear weapons capable of mercilessly punishing those who dare to raise their hand at it, in whatever corner of the planet he may be. A new round of the Korean War will add a particularly sensational event to the history of mankind, which will put an end to another empire whose name is the United States. Ironically, this statement was issued on the 70th anniversary of the Korean War. Just a week before this, Kim Jong-un's sister blew up their embassy in South Korea, and North Korea threatened to move back into zones that were demilitarized under inter-Korean peace agreements in 2018. South Korea's defense ministry responded to Kim's comments and said it was seriously assessing the situation and carefully monitoring North Korean movements. Just the other day, Kim Jong-un said that he is suspending military action, but this is more likely postponed, not canceled, and it's possibly they are working in alliance with others on a more strategic plan. We've been watching the situation with North Korea for years now, even during the time from Obama. This is something that you want to pay attention to, especially with the rhetoric that they are saying. Pay attention to the news that comes about North Korea, South Korea, and the United States. China and India. Just last week, there was a major escalation in the ongoing conflict between China and India. According to Indian officials, at least 20 Indian soldiers were killed in a clash with Chinese forces in a disputed Himalayan border area. It is the first deadly clash in the border area in at least 45 years. China did not confirm any casualties, but accused India in turn of crossing the border onto the Chinese side. China officials said that India had crossed the border twice that Monday, provoking and attacking Chinese personnel, resulting in serious physical confrontation between border forces on the two sides. Over this past weekend, India's army made a significant change in its rules of engagement. They removed the restrictions on their soldiers on using firearms. They said the commanders will no longer be bound by restrictions on the use of firearms and will have full authority to respond to extraordinary situations, using all resources at their disposal. Prime Minister Modi said the army had been given the freedom to take necessary steps along the border, and India had conveyed its position to China through diplomatic means. If this new approach is implemented and Indian troops shoot Chinese soldiers in future encounters, then the China-India border dispute will turn into a military conflict, which is considered a very big deal. Now, if you understand the wickedness in their plan to reduce the world population, you should already expect something major to happen between the two largest populated areas in the world. Pay attention to what's happening between China and India, because this is something that seems that it will escalate. China and the United States. Rhetoric has been heating up between China and the United States for a while now. Beijing has angered many other nations by building artificial islands with military installations in parts of the South China Sea. During President Obama's 8 years in office, the U.S. Navy conducted 4 freedom of navigation operations, while there has been 22 of them under Trump. Experts are claiming that the U.S.-China relations are in full crisis. Last month in May, Donald Trump made a whole speech about China and said very provocative things. To those that were listening and paying attention, it sounded like a wartime speech. He called out China for espionage to steal our industrial secrets, of which there are many. He announced steps to protect American investors from Chinese financial practices, and he accused Beijing of unlawfully claiming territory in the Pacific Ocean, the South China Sea, and that they were threatening freedom of navigation. Now, a week before this, the United States Senate unanimously passed a bill that will prevent companies that refuse to open their books from listing on Wall Street. It was a bipartisan Republican-Democrat signed bill, and the co-sponsors said the goal is to kick deceitful Chinese companies off U.S. exchanges. Also, the NASDAQ proposed a trio of rules that will make it tougher for Chinese companies to go public on that exchange. They're trying to kick China out of our financial system. There's also escalation because China did a huge power grab with Hong Kong, and then China daring Trump to hit back. China's president sent a clear message to Donald Trump. We're going to do what we want in Hong Kong, and we're not scared of the consequences. The United States has also threatened sanctions on China. In an article by the South China Morning Post, a news agency owned by Alibaba, a Chinese company, it says that China is warned to prepare for being cut off from US dollar payment system as a part of sanctions like Russia. They say they are prepared for the worst, which is the next topic I will discuss. On Tuesday, a senior Chinese official said the United States is deploying unprecedented numbers to the Asia-Pacific region, raising the risk of an incident with China's Navy. The U.S. military deployment in the Asia-Pacific region is unprecedented. The possibility of a military incident or an accidental shot being fired is rising. With all this tension and heated rhetoric, the big kicker to be aware of is that there are reports that China may be plotting a Pearl Harbor-style attack against the United States with an EMP. I'm shocked that they're even reporting something like that. The EMP Task Force on National and Homeland Security states in a new report that it is concerned about the vulnerability of our electrical grid and other critical infrastructures and the danger that it poses to our children and families. That's a big statement. Executive Director Dr. Peter Vincent Pry recently wrote that China has long known about nuclear high-altitude electromagnetic pulse, HEMP, and invested in protecting military forces and critical infrastructures from HEMP and other nuclear weapons effects during the Cold War and continuing today. Vincent claims that China has HEMP simulators and related programs that are almost certainly more robust than any in the United States. He made a 14-page report on this. This is a major event that should not be taken lightly, and it is something that many people believe is part of the destiny of the United States, so it should never be ignored. But these are provocations of war that are escalating and very prevalent today. The news media is just focusing on other things and not giving this very much thought. I should also point out that I spoke about these things in my video about the year 2020 when we reviewed the Council on Foreign Relations report on major disruptive events around the world. These escalations should not be ignored, and you should expect some type of military action to transpire at some point. I don't think there's anyone who has not heard of a future World War III. It would be extremely naive to ignore all these escalations and believe that World War III is for another generation other than this one. On top of this, we can't forget the ongoing aggression between Iran and the United States, as well as the ongoing tension between NATO and Russia. Do not be distracted by what the news keeps pushing in your face and not understanding that war is coming. War is coming, and it will be different than all other wars. It's not a matter of if, but when. But let's take a look at something even more troubling. United States dollar collapse. I repeatedly speak about the coming economic collapse and the collapse of the United States dollar. I've made numerous videos about this subject. The United States dollar collapse will be the biggest event that ever hit the world. War can be devastating, and it will touch a great deal of people, but it's mostly geographic, depending on where the war is located. But the United States dollar collapse will touch every country on earth that has been held to the influence of the dollar, which is pretty much the whole world except for countries like Iran and Russia who have been weaned off the dollar because of sanctions. I have been speaking of this event for a while now and explaining the whys and what's about it. Why do you think Iran and North Korea can make such crushing statements about destroying the United States? It's not because they think that their military is stronger or at the same level as the United States, but it's because they know that our economic situation here is so dire that the wrong event can cripple us from the inside. But the coming dollar collapse is not the news. The news is that the mainstream media is finally reporting on it. Now, you may see articles about this topic sporadically in the United States media, but not often. But over the past month or so, they have been speaking directly about this. Now, the reasoning is obviously not the same, and the narrative that they are claiming is different from the overall fundamental reasons why I and many others have been stating quite surely that the dollar will collapse. But either way, they are reporting on it. And this should be a very strong alarm bell ringing off because they are now giving people a little forward notice, though the majority is not paying attention. Look at some of these headlines. This one is from Bloomberg, a major financial publication. A crash in the dollar is coming. The world is having serious doubts about the once widely accepted presumption of American exceptionalism. CNBC, a dollar crash is virtually inevitable, Asia expert Stephen Roach warns. International Business Times, Bitcoin price will hit 400,000 when US dollar collapses, analyst predicts. Market Watch, the decline of the US dollar could happen at warp speed in the era of coronavirus, warns prominent economist Stephen Roach. Now, these articles all stem from one analysis of a Yale economist. But it's not the fact that he is saying it. It's the fact that the media is finally covering it. Like I said earlier, this should be giving off major alarm bells. It did for me, at least. This whole economic system is completely rigged and ridiculous. The NASDAQ just hit record highs on Monday, June 22nd, during the time of the coronavirus pandemic and racial protests and unrest around the country. During a period of massive uncertainty and increasingly high unemployment, the stock market is still hitting records. That's just plain ridiculous. They keep showing us their hand that the game is rigged, and we shouldn't believe them. But unfortunately, the majority of the world is not paying attention, or many that hear these warnings just think they really have more time than they actually do. Point is, do not forget about this event and be really ready for it, because they are now starting to report on it, and it's not a good thing. Always be ready and expectant of a major financial crash, food shortage, and disruption in the supply chain. Now, on top of those military and economic threats, there are domestic threats that are happening in front of us. Now, I'm not sure if this is just where I'm living or it is happening in other places, but there seems to be a problem with inventory. Normal items I have been used to getting at the stores are not stocked very well, and grocery stores like Publix are spreading items out on the shelves to look as if there's items, but there's not a lot. Now, they have been alluding and warning to the fact that we will be coming upon a food shortage in the near future. I'm not saying that it's happening right now, but you should definitely be keeping your attention on it and be prepared for higher food prices and less options in the grocery store. It could be a lack of food or a problem with the supply chain. But this should be a problem you are prepared for as possible, because there will be a food shortage regardless. Look at what happened in Venezuela when they had their economic collapse. People are still eating rats. You have the risk of war and economic collapse, and both of those events bring hunger and food panics. Just go back to the lessons of World War II and the Great Depression. Be mindful of this. The second wave. Prepare for the second wave of the coronavirus. I will not get into this subject in depth because I speak about this in a specific video. If you have not watched the video, watch this before you decide to go back into society. Please make sure that you do. They are already talking of the fact that cases are on the rise again since the reopening. There are already states with hotspots, and Disneyland stopped their reopening. This is how things start. There are also reports that China is going back on lockdown due to a reemergence of the virus. They have not stopped talking about making a vaccine, and Dr. Fauci is very adamant that the virus will return back in the fall. There are so many negative implications that will happen if they say that this virus has come back stronger and we have to go back into lockdown. People are right now making plans without considering what things will be like when they declare the second wave. Do not be this person. You saw how abruptly things changed when they declared a pandemic for the first wave. It went from normal life to instantly life has changed. Life as the way we know it changed instantly. Do not act as if this could not happen again, especially when we keep getting all the warnings and confirmation that the virus will be back in the fall, and it will be more severe than what we experienced during the first wave. Be ready for a new strain and the virus affecting a wider range of people than just the elderly and sick. They have already started to implement some of the tools that will be used for the contact tracing, like what I spoke about in the other video with the partnership of Apple and Google for contact tracing using our cell phones. It's pretty obvious that we have not yet gotten to the full potential of this crisis they have created, which leads me to my last point. Apple unveils their new operating systems. Now, Apple recently was giving a software update on their iPhones that said it was for important security updates and is recommended for all users. What they did not explain is that in the update, they were replacing their COVID-19 contact tracing functionality. Now, I do not have automatic updates on my phone, and you shouldn't either. You should know what the update is before you let it happen. But what I found interesting is just how clever Apple is. Right at the time where they're implementing a virus tracking system for all their users. Again, I spoke about this in the video. Watch this before you decide to go back into society. Right as they start implementing this COVID-19 tracing functionality, they also decided to do a major revamp of their software and change things in a big way with how the phone works. Instead of relying on people on just taking the normal updates on their phone, they have made an enticing product that will draw people to their COVID-19 tracer automatically. People are excited about the changes that Apple has implemented and will gladly deal with the contact tracing functionality in order to have the latest iOS operating system. But this wasn't the biggest part to Apple's unveiling. The big part was that in this software unveiling, they were showing us a glimpse into how the world will be, and it really is scary. Now, when Apple was explaining all of it, I know to many it sounded exciting and convenient. Sometimes I was listening like, yeah, that's really cool. But then I had to snap out of it, because they are really making things convenient, but at a real cost that they are not explaining. You should be aware of what Apple is releasing, because if you look at things with the right perspective, you can really understand the world that we are moving into. They are adding so many features to our lives through our devices, from using our phones as car keys, to tracking our sleep, facial recognition at our door, and monitoring how long we wash our hands. Apple is truly making their way into our complete way of life. They talk a lot about privacy, and they keep reminding you that they care about it, but all of their devices and features of their devices literally invade our privacy. But because we are willing to utilize their offerings of convenience, we gladly forfeit our privacy demands. But they emphasize security in the conference, showing us that they are very careful on who they share our information with. But the big elephant in the room that I don't think many people are even noticing is that we are giving them, the company Apple itself, major access into our lives, and their imprint in our lives will only grow, not reduce. When they spoke about using the phone as car keys and how we can give others digital keys to our car and determine how much access in the car you want to give the other person, at first I was like, that's convenient. And then I said, wait, this means that I am giving programmable access of my car to Apple, and my Apple ID will be assigned to my automobile. So now Apple will fully know everything that is going on between me and my car. Where I am going, how fast I drive, where I stop, who I let drive my car, the temperature I like driving in. Everything. They said this will be the new standard in vehicles. When they said that they were adding dance as a feature to track on the activity monitor, I said, wow, that's good. That really is a good workout. Then I thought about it and said, they are tracking the movement on my arms and where it goes, and allows them to know that I am dancing. Like, if you're swimming, your watch will give you an alert and be like, it looks like you're swimming. Would you like me to track this? They aren't just counting calories and heartbeats. They are completely monitoring how I'm moving my body. I am letting Apple know exactly how I move. I don't like that. When they said their AirPods are able to give movie-like surround sound, I was like, that's dope. But then I kept listening, and they said it got challenging to keep the sound quality when we turned our head or moved the phone, so they use technology to track the motion of our heads, and they compare the motion data from our heads and our device's screen. Now that's creepy. And using AirPods and my device, Apple is tracking how I move my head. No thank you. They talk about tracking our sleep, waking us up with the watch and monitoring if we are achieving the right amount of sleep each night. So now Apple knows what time I am going to sleep and what time I am waking up. The device is monitoring me while I'm sleeping too. No thank you. They're putting our whole lives on a digital server. They're making us like robots that can be tracked digitally. With their Apple Watch, they can tell if I'm washing my hands and give me a countdown to tell me how much longer I need to wash my hands. It tells me, job well done, when I wash my hands for 20 seconds. That's freaky. Plus, you have to really listen to what they're saying and what they're not saying. They said that they can hear that water is running, and based on the movement, they can tell that this is washing hands. But what they are leaving out is that, oh yeah, your watch is listening to what's going on. This new world should scare you. When they talk about using facial recognition with your video doorbell and making sure you know who is at your door or coming to your house, it sounds like a good feature. But then you start realizing, wait, so Apple is using the faces in my phone as facial recognition tool, and now they know who is coming to my house. Now Apple knows who's visiting my house. No, thank you. I mean, I can go on and explain all the different things Apple is implementing. And from the surface, it sounded convenient. But when thinking deeper about it, you can see how this company is totally being used to turn controlling and tracking our lives into being convenient for us. You see that this new world that we are being transitioned into is here, and that we will gladly accept it for more convenience. The same company that is telling us that they care about our privacy is a company that is intent on gathering as much private information about us as possible. This is very dangerous. And to think that we are so willing just to hand over this information to companies like Apple and Google willingly really just shows that we are ripe for the takeover. Because just don't think that just because this is Apple, that Android users are not a part of this. Google is applying the same technologies, but they always just let Apple market it to the masses first, so there is general acceptance. This is the future, regardless if you're an Apple or Android user. That's why they only gave us 2 options with phones. Our devices are meant to be a bridge into the control aspect of the coming transition of the world. And if you really can't see that, based on all the information we will be giving these technology companies, you are not paying attention. These companies literally know more about us than we know about ourselves, and the systems are completely in place to monitor and regulate our lives. Now, the other aspect to discuss is the election, but I will not even get into that at this present time. I will only say that I do not expect there to be an election, and if there is one, I honestly do not expect a solidified result on November 3rd. So at this point in time, I won't say too much on it. But this is what is happening in the world right now. Provocations of war, warnings of a United States dollar collapse, food shortages, the coming second wave of COVID-19, and the tech and systems are here for companies to completely monitor our total way of life. And don't make me even get into what's going on with the racial protests and the destroying of what the system deems as politically incorrect. This world is completely changing under our noses, and if you are not paying attention to it, you will not be ready for the major event that's coming. Like I said, we are just in intermission, and Act 2 is getting ready to start. When I look at these changes, I'm so thankful for our Father's word. I'm so thankful for his warning and his consistent message of not being of this world. He tells us, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world is passing away, and the lust of it. But he who does the will of Elohim abides forever. That's 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. If you are one that heeded this advice and made this a part of you, that you do not feel attached to these changes. You see the world going down a dark path, and though you can see it, you don't feel a part of it. And I promise you, that is a truly wonderful feeling and a blessing. Because as I see what this world is shaping up to be, I have no interest in being a part of it. All these people looking for a revolution in this world, only to become a new type of slave to a new type of system. All these possible major disruptive events, while also witnessing the obvious direction this world is collectively heading in, it seems very clear that our only option is Yahshua the Messiah. Here's our only hope. The world is placing their hopes in false idols and deceptive spirits. We must make sure that we live separate from them. That's obviously right now not possible geographically, but it's definitely possible in mind and in our purpose. We have a blessed hope, and we have promises our Father in heaven has given us. We must keep our focus on him and his promises. But as it is written, eyes have not seen, nor ear heard, nor have entered into the heart of man the things which Elohim has prepared for those who love him. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9. For our citizenship is in heaven, from which we also eagerly wait for the Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ, who will transform our lowly body that it may be conformed to his glorious body, according to the working by which he is able even to subdue all things to himself. Philippians chapter 3, verses 20 through 21. Do not be steered by this world. Be very careful with what you are paying attention to. Stay focused on your relationship with the Most High. Tend to your soul and do not get swayed away with the cares of this world, because everything seems to be moving strategically towards this new world order, and the matters they are placing for you to pay attention to are only there to distract you and get you boggled down in their agenda. None of these things I mentioned should scare you if you're a believer. I'm just bringing them to your attention so you understand what's going on away from the topics the mainstream media only wants you to focus on. Please stay vigilant and in a sound mind. Stay encouraged and faithful. Stay hungry for righteousness and continue to grow your intolerance for wickedness. The days are moving towards complete darkness, and the only way the blind will be able to see is if you continue to be a light for them. Shine your faith through this darkness and be ready for the time of our Master. Be blessed. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please make sure to like it and share it with others. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you subscribe to this channel. Elohim willing, I upload every Friday. Please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, truthandedited.com. As always, I would like to give a very special thank you to those who have donated and contributed to this ministry. Your contribution and support are a huge blessing to this ministry. Thank you for your obedience to Yahweh's call in your heart. I'm humbled by your support, and I'm very thankful for you. Okay, thanks again everyone for watching. I love you all.